It's IB Nation Sports Talk, and we're up and rolling on a Wednesday, and that means Mailbag Day on the show with a steadily shrinking Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. Hope you're enjoying your day today. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good now.
You don't have to go into all the details that you just told me before we started.
I'm doing good now that
you're the one who said you've got a time limit, and then you proceeded to tell me this long tale, so you don't need to retell it on the show now. So
yeah, outside of yesterday, I'm doing pretty good. It's nice out. Gonna go play some sand volleyball, and I've gotten a couple of nice compliments from you. And I took the quarter zip off today, so you didn't have to yell at me for the scratching noise. So.
Oh, nice. Maybe I should just buy you, like a new pair of headsets. Do you still have your microphone there?
No, it broke. My light broke. My microphone broke all of it. So I mean, hey, we have a wedding registry, so if you want to, throw that on there, you're more than welcome.
All right, there you go. Well, we've got plenty of questions queued up, and ready to go here tonight. And man, the mailbag is a full bag right now. I'm just going to start with this. We're not going to answer this, but I saw this from Andre. He said, if you could give Marcus Freeman 3 rapid fire questions about this year's team, what would they be and why those questions? I feel like this would be like a good starter for Friday's rapid fire show.
Yeah.
So we can think about what the questions would be a little bit more, because I've been thinking about it since I saw it, and I haven't come up with anything good off the top of my head. So what do you think? No, I'm not asking you to answer now. I'm saying save it for Friday.
Save it for Friday. I would say the only thing I'm going to add to this question is I think it's a little bit tough because you have to ask questions that Marcus Freeman is going to give you a direct response to, instead of kind of jogging around the question.
What are you going to get the actual answer to, and what are you going to get the tap dance, the word salad kind of thing
that he's really good at?
And that's kind of what I'm thinking. That's why, okay, what are the questions? What are the 3 questions that are going to elicit the best answers? That's right. That's exactly right. Tommy wants to know if we'll both be at the Texas A&M game. Are you planning on being at the A&M game?
I will likely have to say no, because I think that's before the wedding and crunch time for the wedding.
That's right. You probably won't be spending any money on tickets for anything
no.
prior to October 4th, will you?
No, not at all. Unless Bailey bought my Cubs tickets for June 1st. So
nice. That's very nice of your sister to buy you Cubs tickets.
I know. She's got nice money laying around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will definitely be there. I will be at all the home games, as far as I know, this year. I saw Tommy asking questions about parking on the Champions Lounge today. He said that it on the official parking passes, the white lot passes were going for $95, which that's a premium price right there. I told him, when I drive up State Road 23, up Eddy, State Road 23, I come from the south side, so I go past the Trader Joe's and all that kind of stuff. There are still a couple of private or privately owned lots where people are standing out there on the street holding up the sign, $35 to park and that kind of stuff. Do you, other than just find a side street someplace, do you have a hidden treasure parking spot that you would recommend to Tommy that won't take him a half hour to get to the stadium?
Yeah, I think the first place is there's the parking across the street from where all the practice soccer fields are and the baseball fields are.
Those are going to go pretty quickly, though.
Yeah. And I know of a spot where you might have to walk like half a mile to maybe a mile, but I could get you parked for like $25.
Okay. Tommy said he got enough good advice on the board. So, all right, we're not going to try to help you then anymore. Fine.
I was going to say free, but I guess not.
Salty coming in hot with the, he said, after talking with Nick Saban, Trump's considering an executive order that would limit and reform NIL. Would this be helpful or just make it political? Short and sweet, it would make it political. I do not think that the, like any of our government needs to spend any time thinking about any kind of college athletics reform or anything else. I think that this is not specific to either side of the aisle. I just think that it ends up being a grandstanding type situation, and all they're trying to do is win over constituents. So keep it away from politics. Keep athletics away from politics at all costs is my answer to that.
I just think that there's already kind of enough going on, and I enjoy my sports kind of left alone. If anyone's going to
enjoy my sports being sports and leave the politics over here. Honestly, like over the course of the last, I don't know how many years, I honestly think less and less, like politics cross my mind less and less all the time. I know you're still young, and so you have plenty of political things bouncing around in your brain. So at least Andre agrees, whereas DK is just going to call me a commie, at any cost. Another article just came out saying Notre Dame made a hard push for Quinn Ewers. Is there any truth to it or persistent clickbait? Now, I don't know which specific article you're talking about. We did talk about an article earlier in the week that quoted Quinn Ewers' agent and mentioning Notre Dame and Miami as the two spots. Based on everything that I have heard, though, everything that I'm hearing from this side, actually close to Notre Dame, says complete BS. While there may have been contact from the other side, as I said this week, from the agent to Notre Dame, that kind of contact, Notre Dame never made a push for Quinn Ewers. So BS is what I call.
I mean, it just logistically doesn't make sense. They were never going to go to the portal. They were always going to develop a quarterback in-house in this cycle. And I don't think that Quinn Ewers has much upside compared to CJ Carr, or really even Kenny Minchie at the end of the day. You're getting 1 year from a guy who was pretty mid down there at Texas and, didn't get good draft grades and all of the above. So I think that there is more talent in the room at Notre Dame compared to Quinn Ewers. So I just think it's a lot of clickbait. A lot of people know if you throw Notre Dame on it, it's gonna get some clicks, and we'll even touch on that in some rapid fire with our boy Curt Signetti.
That's right. We got some Curt Signetti comments coming up in rapid fire. We've I don't know about clickbait because there is at least, and again, I don't know how many subsequent articles have come out since the one I saw over the weekend that had Ewers' agent quoted. Again, if there are quotes from the agent, it's more than clickbait because he's saying something at that point. But anything that's come out like reacting to it or whatever else since then, like that's where it gets into the clickbait category. But like the actual article quoting the agent, I mean, if the agent said it, I think it's at least a discussion point.
Let me ask you this. At the end of the day, do you think CJ Carr is going to go higher than the 7th round when he does declare for the NFL draft?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Quinn Ewers went in the 7th round. Do you think by the time CJ Carr declares for the draft, he will be selected higher than a 7th round pick?
Much higher than the 7th round. I see CJ Carr 2nd round as the floor, but I think that like as of right now, I'm putting him in the 1st round.
There you go, and that should answer your questions.
Right. And Salty is saying, and again, like this is kind of the article that I read was geared toward this. He says that's the one. Why in the world are these articles coming out when Ewers has already gone to the NFL? Now, the one that I specifically read, like the way that it was sort of positioned was, well, he went to the 7th round. So a lot of people are like, man, why didn't you just stay in school and take some NIL money, play another year in college and have a chance to be a much higher draft pick next year?
Who wanted him?
And that's what the agent was saying in this quote was where they were in the college football. Like Texas, the agent was saying that Ewers would have had to make a decision while Texas was still playing in the college football playoff. And obviously Notre Dame was still in the college football playoff. And so that's what he's saying is like, like he would have had to make his decision. And then, in the meantime, you've got teammates coming to you like, man, you're going into the portal. We're still playing. We're still trying to win a championship, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of what the agent was saying, trying to justify Ewers' decision. So. Outbound says, is Notre Dame just covering so it doesn't look like they really have no confidence in the quarterback room if they admitted to pursuing a quarterback? Look, all along, like Marcus Freeman has been saying since right around, I can't remember exactly when he was asked, but near the end of the season, prior to the playoffs, in that range, he was asked about the transfer portal and quarterbacks, and he said from that point that they were not pursuing it. And, again, like things we've heard, like there's every reason to believe that they had confidence in what they had in their own quarterback room, and they never intended on going out to get a quarterback from the portal. So that's what I fully believe that. Because that's been the, the public comment all along. DK says he just found out on good authority that Salty's been paying 2 local college kids to write his mailbag questions for him.
That's where all the good
I believe it.
Comes
I
from.
believe it. Joe wants to know if the Cubs tickets were on the wedding registry.
No.
Oh man, that's a shame. That'd be
playoff tickets, maybe.
That'd be a nice one. Joe says, do you think current Notre Dame players are holding out for the settlement, the house settlement, to finalize, or holding their breath not to get cut for the lack of jumping into the spring portal? What do you think about that?
To be honest with you, I think it's more of the latter. And I think that, in my opinion, this question is basically asking why there's maybe a lack of numbers in the spring portal. I just think that Notre Dame has done a really good job. I think when you have a transparent coach and you're constantly kind of providing feedback and allowing players to understand where they stand, there's really not a lot of uneasiness at the end of the day, because if you're given a rationale for where you are on the roster, you see the guys ahead of you are doing better than you and performing better than you, then what are you supposed to do at the end of the day, right? Like there's a lot of transparency, and it's not like, like for example, that one of the coaches I had in college would always he would kind of overinflate or kind of pump your head up a little bit, and then you'd get there and kind of have expectations, and then you got upset because you were kind of told one thing and it was a bit exaggerated.
Got something else. Yeah.
You got something else. And I think Marcus Freeman and their coaching staff are really good about just being transparent with the players. And I think that's the number one reason why you didn't see a lot of guys in the spring portal. I think they're very comfortable with the roster that they've put together. And they've done it in a manner where they're transparent about where everyone stands.
Yeah, and I think that Notre Dame has done a really good job of letting all these guys know where they stand. And obviously there was some talk about, well, maybe these guys are going to go into the portal. But, like Freeman and his staff have always been upfront and honest with these guys about exactly where they stand. And I think that, that is a big part of it. And, again, like if some other guys had gone into the portal, I don't think it would have been a complete shock. But, like the way it stands, they stayed. And, I think that ultimately that's going to be good for most of them. Now, there are going to be some guys, if this goes through, if they don't grandfather the stuff in, and that's what's holding up the finalization of the house settlement right now, is whether or not the players are going to be grandfathered in. I don't understand why the NCAA is pushing back and holding out on that, but they are. They have a way of loving to be behind the 8 ball on everything, and that feels like that's where they are right now. They're holding out on it. They're ultimately most likely going to be some guys leave if they don't, include that grandfathering in of the roster for the guys who are currently on the roster. But I do think that there are going to be guys who are ultimately lower on the depth chart if and when that ends up happening. Interesting one from Salty. Which two schools are at Notre Dame's level for tight ends, and are there any schools that are better? And
Iowa comes to mind.
I mean, like Iowa's obviously right now with guys like George Kittle and Laporta up there in Detroit, but Notre Dame, I don't know. I found this at NFL.com. I don't know what the date on this is. Like it breaks down by position, players that are in the NFL. Notre Dame leads the way with 21, and then USC had 20, Penn State 19, Miami 17, Nebraska 15, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin 14 apiece, Oklahoma 13, Colorado, LSU, Stanford, and UCLA at 12 apiece. I mean, Notre Dame has obviously cranked out a lot of tight ends over the years and put them in the NFL, and a lot of guys still on active rosters from that position. Now, in terms of the probably guys, like the elite guys, cream of the crop currently in the NFL, I think that Iowa's probably stands out because of Kittle and Laporta. I mean, those are like two of the top tight ends over the last, Laporta's only been in the NFL for 3 years or something like that.
Kittle, Laporta, Noah Fant.
Hawkinson, yeah, good one.
I think Penn State you could maybe bring on that list because of recency. Jesse James, Mike Gesicki, Pat Fryermuth, Brenton Strain, Theo Johnson, and now Tyler Warren. So if I'm thinking, of recent, I want to say Notre Dame, Iowa, Penn State. But I think over the longevity of things, Notre Dame kind of takes the cake because, they had good tight ends going back to the day. You had Dave Casper, Ken McAfee, Irv Smith, some of those older guys. I think Miami deserves a shout out. Early 2000s, you had, some all pros kind of come out of there. Jeremy Shockey, Bubba Franks, Greg Olson, Kellen Winslow, Jimmy Graham came out of there. So, David Njoku, guys like that. So I would say, what comes to mind, Notre Dame, Iowa, Penn State, Miami. But I think Notre Dame is like up there.
Yeah. Again, they might not have the guys who are the elite NFL tight ends, but Notre Dame obviously puts a lot of volume, into the NFL. Like every other draft, probably on average, you've got Notre Dame guys going in. DK dishing out some compliments for you. He said, cut back on the protein shakes and free weights. You're looking svelte.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Back to the transfer thing. Tommy says, if you're in Coach Freeman's spot and had to cut these players, which position group would you start with, and which position group do you think most cuts come from? I mean, personally, I don't think it's going to be like one position group that's going to be hit the most, because I honestly just think it's going to be like, for starters, you only have to get down about 12 players or so. And so to get from like 116, 117 to 105, I mean, the first guys who are going to go are just the walk-on guys. So that's going to be, that's just the way it is. And that's going to be regardless of what position they're at. So I don't think it's going to be necessarily one position group that's most affected. I think that it's just going to be like those kind of guys are going to be the first to go. And then, so maybe you have, like some walk-on guys in the secondary or linebackers or something like that. I think it's going to be more.
Basically, you kind of have a guy straggling at each position group. I don't think it's just going to be concentrated to one position group. If I had to pick one, just get rid of the specialists. We don't need 3 punters and 3 kickers and
and that's why like a guy like Reno Monteforte, left. Like you don't need 3 long snappers on the team, and he already made his move. So
Shout out Vince. I hope he's not mad at me.
Mark says, given the recent losses by women's basketball in preseason exhibitions, France, Cayman Islands, will they consider leaving Sean at home to avoid his potential bad luck? I mean,
I think it's more or less mom's fault.
I was going to say I might have to leave my significant other behind instead because she has gone on those trips with me. So, on my dime, by the way, they haven't paid for her to go, just to kind of get that out there. But she has gone on the trips. So, but a good question.
Fun question.
Salty wants to know which 3 players fell the most after spring sessions and the blue gold game. Do you have any in mind?
Steve Angeli.
That's the first one that came to mind for me. I mean, he's,
it's kind of obvious, but
yeah. And I would say Urlacher, because of the rise of Tay Johnson. I think that those 2 guys, I mean, those are the 2 most significant guys to hit the transfer portal. Otherwise, I don't know about fell, but definitely didn't gain ground. Like a guy like Armel Mukum didn't really rise. Sean Sevillano Jr. We didn't see a big spike out of him.
I was kind of looking at the defensive line.
Yeah.
I mean, do people like Bodie Cahoon and Preston Zinter, with just like how many linebackers that they have that they're just kind of like stockpiling in front of them type situation? I think those guys can be considered.
And like DJ says, Junior, I assume he's talking about Junior Tuihalamaka, and he became a bit of a topic over the last couple days because we did our top 20 defensive player ranking for the team, Vince and I, this week, and neither one of us had. Well, we did it. We alternated the picks, but we didn't include Tuihalamaka in there. And like with Traore and Botelho still out this spring, that was an opportunity for Tuihalamaka, really to kind of make more of a case for himself. But again, he definitely didn't rise. Like he was not a guy that stood out when we were out there.
Man, I can't think of his name right now. Would you consider Jabron Payne to be on this list?
Interesting one. I wouldn't say. I mean, he was still coming back from injury, and he did, he made a play or 2 out there. But again, like not a guy who was able to jump out, even though the reps were more limited for guys like Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Now, at the same time, there's only so much we got to see. So that was, like specific to the 2 practices that we got to see. Again, like didn't make a huge case. And like DJ saying, surprised Jabron stayed. And I mean, honestly,
Same.
given the depth chart of that room, like he felt like a prime guy who might have hit the transfer portal because of how deep the talent is with those 3 guys in front of him when you throw Aeneas Williams in there. And the fact that J1 Sider has talked about the fact that Jeremiah Love's going to be on the field more on 3rd down this season. Like what are the opportunities here for Payne?
Oh, thank the Lord.
It's going to be tough.
Every time I saw Aeneas Williams on 3rd down, I had to say a little prayer. What I think Andrew brings up a good point about KK Smith.
KK Smith, good one. Because he was out there, and he had a few catches in the blue gold game, but like never really.
But really, it was for a lot of young wide receivers to do something.
Right. Chance Tucker's another good one, old jarhead, because I think that definitely Carson Hobbs made more of a statement when we got to see him out there than Tucker did. I think that's a good one. And like Josh says, Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams will pass him up. I mean, theoretically, I think they already
did
have. So, yeah. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting just to see kind of what that role looks like for him. Josh, going back to the Quinn Ewers, I start this comment up. He says he could have waited till the spring to transfer. That is very true. He could have just stuck it out at Texas. Now, maybe that kind of mucks things up at Texas, though, as well. If he's going through the spring with Arch Manning, when the writing was basically on the wall that it was going to be Arch Manning, But I mean, the alternative is being a 7th round draft pick. I don't think that he anticipated going as far as he did, but obviously Shedeur Sanders didn't anticipate going as far as he did either. So, yeah. Domer Grizz wants you to tap into your coaching experience. He says he's coaching a 5th and 6th grade baseball team with a few kids who never played before. What are your tips for helping them understand the game, strategy, situations, etc.?
It's funny. That's kind of the age group I'm at right now. We just had our first practice last night. A little bit of coach pitch. Really, the stuff that, like, understanding the game and strategy, that's kind of the hardest part, because if you haven't played before, the only way you're going to kind of gain that experience is just playing. But when I'm at practice, the things that I like to just focus on are like just very, very fundamentals, right? So like when we're fielding a ground ball, make sure your glove is in the dirt and you got your alligator hand on top.
Mm-hmm.
When you're hitting, make sure you squash the back foot and you throw your knob at the ball and swing hard. When we're throwing, we're just trying to, get the ball back and make sure we're following through and pointing at our partner when we're throwing, just to kind of overemphasize some stuff. But I really try to focus on the fundamentals for a long time, because, like, unless you're playing at an elite level and you've played a lot of baseball, the situation stuff doesn't really happen. But it's funny. I don't want to spend too long on this, but a couple days ago, I was arguing with this guy on Twitter.
Oh, boy.
Because he was saying that you should start – like, MLBers, the whole argument is like a third base coach is kind of irrelevant, because MLB players should be able to read the ball and make their own decision, essentially. And this guy was saying that we should let, 5th and 6th graders do the same type of thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's all fine and dandy until
everyone's just going to run through and get thrown out by a mile at home plate.
Because when you have an over-exaggerated ego of what you can accomplish and how fast you are, and to the point of this question, you're still learning the game, right? Like, you need to understand the situation more. And so I responded and I was like, yeah, but like, it doesn't make sense at that level because you're just going to get canned. And he was like, okay. And it's like, all right. So basically he's just implying it's youth baseball. So like, who cares if you
just let everybody do whatever they want.
Yeah. And I was like, there's just a time and place for it all, like you don't need to, there's high schoolers who can't even read a ball and determine if they can make it home or not. Like, to me, that's an advanced skill. So sorry, not to go off on a tangent.
No, it is, because it's amazing. Like, and look, you gain instinct by playing. The more you play, the more those things come to you. And so, to your point, by the time you get to the major league level, with all the at-bats you've taken, from little league through high school and all the travel ball games that those guys play in, and then, whether it's college or minor leagues, all the reps that they get to, like, those base running things should be second nature by the time they got there. But having coached both this age group that we're talking about, 5th and 6th graders, and high schoolers, it's much more fun to coach the 5th and 6th graders, because they don't know anything yet.
Yes,
like,
and they listen.
They are little balls of clay, and they do, for the most part, listen. And it's much more enjoyable to coach that than if you do what this guy is talking about and just let them do whatever they want and not gain any, real reps and, gain any real instinct by running the bases and, like, pick up the third base coach. Like, that's one of the first things I think you talk about when you're coaching at third base. Like, from the time they swing the bat, when they round first, they have to pick up the third base coach to figure out what you're doing. If you're at first base, pick up the third base coach for either a stop sign or a go. But then all those other things that you're talking about, where the ball's coming in, like, those are things that, like, as 5th or 6th graders, you're not probably focusing on in the first month, but they are teaching points as you go through the season and you're going through your games that you can talk about. when this happens, when you're at first base and there's a ball in play to right field, like you should be able to get to third base, like especially if you have a good enough jump. But those are things you can talk about in turn, and it was so frustrating getting guys in high school who had, it's like you and a couple other guys had any real feel for the game.
No baseball IQ.
And as a high school coach, like you would expect that there was going to be a certain level, a certain amount of that by the time you get to high school. But to the question, like I would focus on, and DJ said
hitting,
it here
baby.
Just a second ago. Just work on hitting.
What do I tell you every time?
Work on hitting and catching the ball. Like it's really that simple. If there's a runner at first, throw to second, step on the base, get the force out. Otherwise, throw to first. But like as you know, like I like watching a kid swing a bat and then being able to look at things and figure out, okay,
yes,
if we just tweak this a little bit, you're going to be a lot better off. Like if it's an all arm swing and there's no lower body, like let's get those hips turning a little bit. Start your swing with your hips, those kind of things. Just and that's kind of where you get squish the bug and all that different kind of stuff. Just focus on hitting first. Focus on, as you said, ground balls, catching the ball, where to go with the ball once the ball is in play. I think that like those things right there, that's the simplest stuff to teach.
2 final thoughts on this. I tell you every year, if there's one thing we're going to be good at, it's hitting the ball. Because at this age, if you put the ball in play, half the teams can't field. And then once they field it, half the teams can't make the throw. So you got a pretty good chance that you're going to make something happen. Second, are you telling me I had good baseball IQ when I ran through your stop sign and legged out a triple?
You will always bring that up.
Clearly, I knew my skills and where that ball was.
But as a third base coach, what are the what's one of the rules? Don't make the first or third out at third base, right?
Right.
So I got big husky Jesse drilling a ball to center field with no outs, and it's like I'm fully content with the double. But we're in a minor league ballpark, one of the few times he got to play in a minor league ballpark, and so he runs right through the stop sign and ends up at third base. It's like, all right, I can live with it because you made it. So
I had to send them a warning. Don't play shallow.
Would have been a different story if you'd been thrown out. So.
Yeah, I'd still probably be at the stadium.
I think there was another one that you ran through one time that just missed getting out of the park. Okay, Salty's counter question. Which 3 players rose the most in the spring for Notre Dame? I would say Tay Johnson is my number 1. Anybody else you want to go with?
I always got to pull up the depth chart, so just give me 1 second. Because...
All right. I've got a couple others off the top of my head.
I think you could put Kenny Minchie on that list because he forced Steve Angeli to transfer.
Good call.
I think Elijah Burris made a good name for himself.
That would have been my next one.
I think Luke Talich had another good spring.
Yeah. Good one.
Oh.
Let me look at my couple of lists here and see. Carson Hobbs.
Is a guy. There was a 5th offensive lineman that had a good spring.
Sullivan Absher. Another good one.
Sullivan Absher. That's who I was thinking of.
Yep.
And I think that would end my list.
I think that I'm with you. It's kind of there. Like Gerby Lambert was climbing and then he got hurt, unfortunately. DK, Hobbs Burris, and CJ. I mean, I guess we've got to include CJ Carr because it's either going to be him or Minchie for the starting quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can include both of those guys in there. I think those are good. Andrew says Bowman. That's a good one, because I think that that was with all the injuries that Kevin Bowman has had for him to close the spring the way he did and look like he can be an actual contributor this year. I think that was really big for him because, I mean, it's literally been, I think it's been 4 years ago since like he was like Mr. Red Zone touchdown tight end in fall training camp, and then all of a sudden he gets hurt, and we just never got to see him fully utilize that potential. So yeah, he had a nice spring, and it felt like with where the tight end room is right now, that it turned out to be a pretty important spring for him.
My only counter to Carr would be is I feel like he had a better spring if you thought Steve Angeli was going to be the guy. A lot of people in this circle kind of thought CJ Carr would be the guy. And it still takes it to prove yourself, don't get me wrong, but I think I gave Kenny Minc more recognition than Carr, because I thought Carr was going to be at the top. I didn't know what would happen with Minc and Angeli, but obviously they felt better about Minc, and it forced Angeli to pack it up. Do you count Jason Onye?
That's a good one, because I mean he was away from the team last year and came back. Yeah, like we've seen him flash in the spring before, so that's why like it's maybe a little bit tougher. But the fact that he was away for as long as he was and then came back and was still able to play at a high level, I think it's fair to include him. Andre asks, if there was no NIL, do you believe Notre Dame would still be a destination for high school recruits?
Yeah, I do. And this kind of goes back to, I feel like every time we kind of talk about this, Notre Dame's a complete package. They offer more than the NIL, the education, the coaching staff. If you have religious beliefs and backgrounds like Riley Leonard, someone who's deeply rooted in faith, that sort of stuff. So I just say yes because Notre Dame can offer more while you're here, and they can definitely offer more post-graduation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it definitely would. Like if there was no NIL and there was only transfer portal, like,
and then you take the most recent success on top of that.
Right, the success and the fact that you've got a coaching staff from the top down that believes in building the relationships with the players. Because like if you take the money, because again, like, yeah, sure, I'm sure that there was, some money factors in some of these decisions to stay or go. I'm sure it came into play for at least some of these guys. But at the core of this whole thing is the relationships that Marcus Freeman and his staff have built with these guys. And I think that like if you took money out of it, if that was zero factor, then I think Notre Dame would still be bringing these guys in at a really high level. So, yeah. The question, there it is. Scott says he's on his third year coaching the same age group in baseball, still young enough that you're going to have to coach effort, do drills with stations, get the kids practicing fast, do situations, make them think. I mean, that's good as well, because again, like, especially by the time you get to high school, if you want to upset a coach more than anything, make him have to coach your effort all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, this is funny because this just goes back to kind of what you were getting into. Everyone always asks me, you're a good baseball coach. You seem to enjoy it. What, you don't have any kids. Why do you coach such young kids? Why don't you coach, high school, or maybe at least where the kids are pitching? Every time I tell them, I'm just going to have raised expectations, and I'm just going to get angry because they're not living up to the expectations that they should be playing at that level.
And that's when the frustrations start coming out. Yeah, the older
those kids, they still listen to you. They're like moldable clay. And when they do something, you tell them, and they get the results, seeing that look on their face of like, wow, I actually did that, is really gratifying. So it's just like, I'm at the age here where I'm just trying to teach these kids as much as I can. And if you love baseball, you can go on and continue to play it. If not, you tried it and you had some fun. So I just can't get into the older kids because I'll just get too upset, and I'll my expectations will just go up. And so I'm just not going to do that to myself.
Nope, that's very true. And what was I remember like one of the, I think it might have been the first little league team that you were on that I coached, like we broke the huddle, play hard, have fun. That was kind of our slogan, play hard, have fun. And that was it. and you can have a lot of fun by playing hard.
Exactly. Because if you're playing hard and you're having fun, you're likely doing something right.
Yep.
So good times. Good times.
Salty says, even though John does eventually get Anne that life insurance, it seems that he is not satisfying her. Does their marriage have a chance? Do you know what commercial he's talking about?
No.
It's the one where Anne harangues John about what, she's just barking at him about why he hasn't bought the life insurance. I love that Salty every once in a while still references that. Mel Kyper Jr. grew increasingly incensed as Shedeur Sanders slid down the draft by tripling down on it. Was he sticking to his guns good or pouting bad?
I think you can stick to your guns to some point, but the part that really upset me is his job is to, talk about and assess everyone, not just be obsessed with Shedeur Sanders. It's still, over 200 guys' best day of their life. And so I think that they deserve kind of the credit that they were due in that situation of at least giving them a, 30-second spotlight, talking about them a little bit, and then moving on. But to continue to talk about Shedeur Sanders is fine. Like, if you want to bring it up at the beginning of each day, cool. But like, once the draft starts and ongoing, like, you just got to let it go and really give, pay tribute to these guys who are living out their dream and getting drafted to an NFL team.
Yeah, I felt like that I don't know that he was pouting. He was definitely sticking to his guns. And I just felt like that, look, he had Shedeur Sanders ranked as his number one guy. So literally everybody who was picked the rest of the weekend, as long as Shedeur Sanders stayed on the board, Mel Kyper Jr. had a sounding point. I just felt like it went too far because, as you said, he was taking away from other guys when they were drafted and not talking enough about them. He just, was obviously talking about one guy for most of the weekend. Mark says, back when Notre Dame made their College World Series run, what were your thoughts on the Tennessee classless versus Catholics t-shirts? Oh, okay. So this is from just 3 years ago. The classless versus Catholics. I mean, if you look at the reputation that Tony Vitello has down there at Tennessee, I think that, it pretty much suits the t-shirt, the classless part of it. Like, you talk about a guy who gets amped up and wound up. I don't know what just happened to Jesse, but I think he's having some kind of issue. I don't know if it's a dog issue or what, but yeah. But yeah, all in on the classes versus Catholics t-shirts. Mark also says, so Jesse wants to avoid what Sean felt coaching. Coaching Jesse. Okay. Didn't have any issues with him playing hard and those kind of things. But there are plenty of other guys who fit into that category. Salty wants to know if Bill Belichick should have taken the North Carolina job and how's he doing in that role to date. Hard to know exactly how he's doing from a coaching football / building the program standpoint, because like all that everybody's talking about with Bill Belichick right now is the stuff that happened on TV. So no idea exactly how he's doing coaching that role. I know they've got, they brought in some guys from the portal and stuff like that. And they obviously feel good about what they're doing. They keep patting themselves on the back saying that they're going to be the 33rd NFL team and all that. Okay, well, we'll see how that plays, because at least to some extent, that was kind of the Charlie Weiss philosophy as well. Let's see how he develops a roster, when he's not getting guys who are ready to go when they walk in the door in college, for the most part, like he was in the NFL. It's a completely different identification and, process, and a completely different pool of talent that you're getting. Should he have taken the North Carolina job? I don't think so. I think that I think that he should have just stayed in TV and worked in the media. I mean, he's and just had a good life, quite frankly. Like, I do think that it's very funny that right now that Bill Belichick, like going back to that interview with CBS, for his whole entire coaching career, whether it was as an assistant or as a head coach, he had nothing but disdain for the media. Didn't want to talk to the media. Like, it's on to Cincinnati. Gave him the shortest, most direct answers as possible. Say as little as possible. Keep them at more than arm's length and don't say anything. And now, like the first opportunity, not the first opportunity, but in a big opportunity to sit in front of a national audience with someone who really wasn't even talking that much football about him, like you're talking about your book, like the whole thing just turned into a disaster, completely blew up. So I think that coming back to college was a bad route. He obviously wasn't getting an opportunity in the NFL. If he thinks this is going to get him another chance in the NFL, I mean, you're not getting younger. You're only getting older every year. So I don't think it was a good idea for him to go the college route and try to go in that direction. But again, he wasn't getting any NFL offers. Between J-Dog Blair and the Golden One, which, if either, will be the first to break into the starting lineup? Welcome back. Do you want to take that one?
My dogs were being very bad.
It's funny because I couldn't even hear them. We probably need to wrap up with this and then get into rapid fire because you're on a little bit of a time limit tonight. So I'm just going to say Dallas Golden. We talked about him last week because of the dual threat ability, like wanting to play on both sides. I think that ultimately that's going to give him more opportunities to see the field earlier, and as great an athlete as he is. And the safety position, I think Blair, I don't know if he's going to be in the mix this year. I think by next year he can. I mean, I don't know that Dallas Golden's going to be in the mix this year, but I think just because of the, playing on both sides of the ball kind of thing, I'll go with Dallas Golden.
Yeah, I'm going to go Dallas Golden as well, just because of what you were talking about. The only thing that has me, some reserves about Jaydon Blair is Tay Johnson is, basically same age class as him. And I think he had a better spring. You still have a Don Schuler who's probably going to be around another year. Leonard Moore who's going to be around another year. So I just think there's a little bit of congestion in front of him. I still think he's a really good player, and an opportunity still could be there. But I'm just going to go with Golden for now.
Okay, Jesse. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's take this sucker home.
All right, here we go. So you teased this a little bit earlier. Indiana football coach Curt Signetti, never afraid to speak his mind. He talked with CBS Sports recently and had this to say about NIL. Again, this is from Curt Signetti. Quote, the 5 or 6 out there that have unlimited NIL resources, it's kind of scary for everybody else. I think our little pot of gold is pretty nice, but we're not at 40 million or 30 million or even 25 million. I mean, if you want to be the best, you got to be able to compete against the best. Right now, I understand that as Oregon, Ohio State, Texas Tech because of their oil money. I think Notre Dame's up there pretty good right now too. Miami, of course. End quote. Those comments from Curt Signetti are blank.
They're just not necessary. When you come out and you start taking shots like that, you just put a target on your back. And at the end of the day, he doesn't know, to be honest with you. And I don't think it's a coincidence that 2 of the teams that beat him ended up on that list, right? And I think Notre Dame is kind of like that afterthought where, I think Notre Dame's up there because they'd have to be because they beat us, right? And so, I feel like Curt Signetti always has ammunition or kind of excuses for maybe why he has a little bit of shortcomings at the end of the day. And just like when we were talking earlier, you slap Notre Dame's name on something and it's going to give it, more meat to it, more attention, more clicks, that sort of stuff. But the thing is Curt Signetti has no real idea how much Notre Dame spends on NIL, and I just don't think it's in his best interest to kind of go out there and start talking about some stuff that he doesn't have all the information about.
Oh, this is an interesting way to look at it from Andrew. He says he's being transparent, trying to get his boosters to donate more to NIL. Okay, I can see that perspective. Like I think every coach is going to try to tell you in the age that we're in that they need more NIL money. But there are a lot of different ways to look at this. First, Indiana's not going to win 11 games this year because Curt Signetti is telling you right now that Indiana is not going to win 11 games this year, because I completely agree with what Brian says. Sounds like he's already making excuses for the down year that he's going to have. And, like there are a lot of different ways to look at this, but he's pulling the Brian Kelly, giving you the excuses why he can't win in advance. And then if he does end up winning, it's like, well, see, I did it, even though I didn't have all the big NIL resources. And if he doesn't, it's like, well, now I've got to have more NIL resources, to Andrew's point, and like he hit it big with the portal last year, getting guys from James Madison and the MAC and stuff like that. But it seems like he's found out that the cost of, it costs a lot more to get Power 4 players, and he's mad about it. Now, the next way to look at this is, look, Indiana, Curt Signetti, you're in the Big Ten, the same Big Ten that broke up the Pac-12, along with Fox, and, all this money that's supposed to be coming in, like, how about you use some of that for NIL funds if you don't think that you've got enough money, because you're getting all this TV money that's supposed to benefit you, So, go cry to your school if you want more money out of this thing. And then the third way to look at this is like the fact that he's mentioning Notre Dame is nothing but good, because there's been this perception, there was really, this is even probably within the last year, like, because you don't hear about, like numbers flying out of Notre Dame, exactly how much is going to who, and, if, what they're spending on NIL and all that kind of stuff. There was a perception that Notre Dame wasn't willing to go all in with the NIL to compete with the big boys. But the fact is, like the fact that he's casually tossing Notre Dame's name around out there is one of the, schools that's spending big. That's just free advertising for Notre Dame, mentioning them in that breath, that they are one of the top schools in NIL, and why Notre Dame might not, straight up be in the pay for play game. They're a major player in the NIL space because their AD and their coach are both all in on winning a national championship. So, like, I do feel like it's some excuse making for Signetti up front, but ultimately I think it's actually good that he's mentioning Notre Dame the way he is.
No such thing as bad publicity, right?
Nope, not in this case. I don't think so. Andrew says his mentor Saban famously talked about A&M's big spend, and Signetti is imitating Saban. And yeah, I mean, Saban obviously is very anti-NIL as well. So after seeing Notre Dame and Clemson agree to a 12-year home-and-home schedule yesterday, Jesse, what is the next team you would like to see the Irish establish a new rivalry with?
Yeah, I mean, this might not land well with a lot of people, but I'm kind of digging this whole Ohio State saga that they've got going on right now. I think they've obviously had the Michigan on the schedule. They've had Penn State on the schedule. They've got Michigan State on the schedule. You got Purdue on the schedule. I think establishing this with Ohio State, both teams, at the top, or Ohio State's at the top of its game. Notre Dame's at the top of their game. They play a lot of meaningful games over the last couple of years, obviously the national championship. And so, that's how Clemson and Notre Dame started, is they started to play meaningful games. All the games were close, had high stakes, and that sort of thing. And so I like the more regional matchups, right? Like something that both fan bases can mobilize to. It's not that far from Columbus to South Bend. My mom's going to make that drive this weekend. She can tell you all about it. But yeah, I like where Ohio State and Notre Dame are right now as programs. Obviously, you would hope that Notre Dame can kind of turn the tide here a little bit and pick up some wins against Ohio State, but I don't mind Notre Dame challenging themselves against a regional opponent.
See, and that's why I would just go with Michigan. They've played 43 times, but they haven't played since 2019. Now they're going to come back on the schedule for a couple years here in the 2030s. But from 1998 to 2014, they played 16 of those 18 years. It was nearly continuous. And then it stopped for a couple years. It came back. We got the chicken dance, and then we got rain, and it went away. There's less than 180 miles that separate South Bend and Ann Arbor. This is a great rivalry. To a lot of people, Notre Dame, Michigan, historically has been one of the greatest college football rivalries in this country. And the fact that we're not getting it, there's an opportunity potentially here. And if you've got that opportunity, again, look at what Pete Bavacqua did by signing this 12-year deal with Clemson. He knows that this is good television. This is good for the TV partner. Do you think that Notre Dame, Michigan wouldn't be good for the TV partners, especially when NBC is part of the deal where they can be televising, road Notre Dame games as well, potentially, if you had a Notre Dame in Michigan, and I know Fox is in there still as well, but Michigan's a no-brainer for me. I think that this needs to be on the schedule more regularly going forward, especially if there's an opportunity to do it. So I had sorry, go ahead.
I wouldn't mind Michigan or Ohio State, both regional opponents. Obviously, there's more tradition with Michigan, but I just want something regional, something that kind of feels like a turf war almost.
Yeah. Like David says he grew up on Notre Dame, Michigan. And I mean, early 90s, again, they weren't playing every year, but for late 80s, early 90s, they were playing fairly regularly. Then it went away for a good chunk of the 90s, and then it came back at the end of the 90s and was fairly continuous, for 14 straight years, I think. Now, I had David Lake on yesterday. He covers Miami, and I asked him in that interview, and if you haven't heard the full interview, you can go to our podcast archive or YouTube or wherever you want to, and you can listen to the interview. We talked a lot about Carson Beck and some other stuff, but I asked him, since the Notre Dame Clemson deal had just been announced, what about Notre Dame Miami? Would there be an appetite from the Miami side to maybe see that come back more regularly?
It definitely would be here for that. I think, it's good for fans, and also I think ideally it brings in more revenue, right? So I think if that's the bottom line, it brings in more revenue, getting primetime, big-time matchups like a Notre Dame. I think Miami definitely would be here for that. So 100%, and I'd love to see it too.
Now, we're supposed to get more Miami and Florida State as part of this ACC deal. What do you think about Miami? Would you accept Miami as a regular going forward?
I'm more hesitant on Miami. I think more of that tradition is kind of in the past, but, still meaningful football. But if I had to pick between Miami or Michigan, Miami, Ohio State, Miami, Penn State, I would pick, all of those Midwest teams before I pick Miami. Don't get me wrong, it would be good games, but Miami's got to show up every year. They can't put us on the schedule and then back out like they did last year.
And that's the thing. I didn't even bring that up because, what's he going to say? He's just another guy in the media. The fact that, as I've said before, last year's game, Notre Dame Miami, that got pushed off the schedule because Miami, scheduled Florida A&M and put too many teams on the schedule. I guarantee you, if that had been a home game last year for Miami, they wouldn't have been pushing Notre Dame off the schedule because, like he was just saying there, more revenue and all those other factors as well. I think Miami would probably be around, my number 5 option. Yeah. I'm obviously so I'm old enough to remember when that rivalry meant something, but it went away for a long time because, it's basically not a rivalry anymore because of the fact that it got so bitter and, they just decided that it wasn't worth doing it anymore. But I think that, I think it's a nice possibility. It kind of, goes back to some nostalgia for people who remember some of that. Tommy saying Notre Dame is not a regional team, kind of to your point about playing teams in the region. They're not, but Notre Dame, Michigan, and Ohio State are 3 of the top national TV brands. So the playing one of those two teams, or even both of them, kind of on a revolving basis. I think we've talked about this before. Even if you did it where you've got a 2-year home and home with Michigan, and then you've got a 2-year home and home with Ohio State, and then you just kept rotating like that.
That's what ideally would be awesome to me.
Yeah, and then like everyone who comes through Notre Dame, Michigan, or Ohio State, you would get to play those schools at least twice in your 4 years, in school if you revolved it like that. I think that would be perfect because, again, like the proximity helps add to the rivalry, but also these are three, like Michigan and Ohio State have won the last 2 national championships, and Notre Dame obviously just played Ohio State in the national championship game, and you would get monster TV ratings just like you have when Notre Dame and Ohio State have played the last couple years in the regular season. So I think that those, even though I agree, like a regional rivalry like Purdue or Indiana doesn't make sense because those are not college football brand names. But Notre Dame playing either Ohio State or Michigan regularly, I'm there for that. I'm totally there for that.
Yeah, closing thought on this. I don't know. I know you and Vince probably talked about this a lot yesterday. Don't want to go too deep. I think that this Clemson deal just shows me more and more red flags. Ohio State wants nothing to do with, USC wants nothing to do with Notre Dame anymore.
I think it's potentially a sign that could be coming. Like you're giving yourself a backup plan by making sure that you've got a quality opponent. What's at least right now a quality opponent on the schedule year in and year out. I definitely agree with that. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame baseball won its 3rd straight ACC series over the weekend by taking 2 out of 3 games from Louisville. The Irish are now 26-19 overall, 12-15 in conference play with 7 games remaining before the ACC tournament. This makes you feel blank about their season.
Makes me feel rejuvenated, to be honest with you, because, at the beginning of a couple of weeks ago, we were sitting here talking about how they're losing weekday games to Western Michigan. Their offense was in the tank. Their starting pitching was in the tank. They just really didn't have a lot kind of going on for them, and they were showing no signs of progression. And this is year 3 for this head coach, and so you had to make some progression. We wanted them to make the tournament this year. If they can be on that bubble and maybe be one of the first, 4 in or out, I would be more comfortable with that. But I feel rejuvenated because I felt like we were on this slope, and they kind of got to the bottom and something kind of kicked in, and now we're kind of trending more upwards. So feeling a lot better about it. There's still a lot of work to do, unfortunately, but I feel rejuvenated in the fact that they're just not a bad team anymore.
I mean, they're showing signs of life, and that's what you want. And, look, wins are wins, as the first part of this season, and especially playing in the ACC where there's a lot of quality, ranked teams, like the ability to at least take one game from Florida State, and one game in some of those series, like that's turned out to be fairly crucial. Obviously, the goal is just win series. Now look, you do have to take some of this with a grain of salt, and I'm not knocking them because, again, wins are wins, but Cal and Stanford this year are 2 of the worst teams in the ACC, and that's where, like this streak started by sweeping both of those teams. Now, even though they're at the bottom of the conference, again, as Florida State, who's sitting at the top of the conference right now, can attest, well, Notre Dame took a game from them earlier in the season. So, like, just because you're a bad team or just because you're playing a bad team, it's not a given that you're going to get a sweep. Anybody can take a game away from you now and then. So they at least did get the sweep. They played themselves back into contention. Louisville, a legit team. They were ranked number 17 in the nation last weekend when Notre Dame kind of shocked them, to be quite honest, and took 2 out of 3 games away from them. But the bottom line for me is, I said at the start of the season, the minimal requirement for progress to be shown for Sean Stifler in year 3 is to at least be on the NCAA tournament bubble. And they're on the bubble right now. I saw a projection earlier this week that has them in the first 4 out. So, like, they're still out of the tournament, but they are squarely on the bubble with an opportunity maybe to get in. Like, here's the big thing for them right now. They've got 3 non-conference, a 3-game non-conference series coming up against Bowling Green because they've got finals and then, You know, they've got their conference bye weekend, so like that's not going to do anything for their RPI. But then they've got one game against Eastern Michigan that's been rained out like a million times this season, and then they close the regular season at Miami before the ACC tournament. So, like personally, for them to have a chance, like a legitimate chance to make it into the tournament field, I feel like they've probably got to win 7 of these last 8 games with, you know, like one, the only loss can probably come in the Miami series, but they still need to win that series. And then I think that they probably need to win at least 3 games in the ACC tournament as well. Like right now, they're the number 11 seed. So if you win 3 games, you would get to the semifinals. I think that that's probably what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to stay extremely hot here down the stretch.
Agreed.
But we can at least feel better about where they are right now with an opportunity. It's more than you would have said 3 weeks ago. So Abdul Carter, the New York Giants rookie, just can't seem to get a jersey number. First, he wanted Lawrence Taylor's number 56, but that number is retired, and Taylor wouldn't let him have it. And so Carter was then going to try for number 11 that he wore at Penn State, but Phil Simms said no because that number is also retired. So a few questions here about jersey numbers, retired, and everything else. Is it a tribute or is it disrespectful to request a retired jersey number?
I think it's pretty disrespectful at the end of the day. Basically, what you're saying is you believe you are good enough without playing an NFL snap to unretire a number. So I think it's disrespectful. A lot of what I feel about this topic will probably come in the last question of this. And so I'm trying not to give myself away.
You're spacing it out because I've got multiple questions that's coming with this. So I think it's disrespectful as well. I think like if it's a number that you wore in college and you get drafted by the team and you want that number, and I think if the guy whose number, you know, like if Phil Simms had come to Abdul Carter and said, take this jersey, you know, like wear number 11, wear it proudly. I played offense. You're a defensive player, you know, 2 different sides of the ball. Go for it. I think that would be one thing. But like you're asking LT to wear his number 56.
I mean, you haven't done a snap, and look at what he did in his whole career.
LT is like the first truly great outside linebacker edge rushers. Like there is like LT, Lawrence Taylor is one of one. And like you're asking Lawrence Taylor for his jersey number. Sorry. I can't
Who do you
go
think
for that.
You are?
That's right. Is there a number you consider the most untouchable?
Like just number in general or like position number?
I don't know.
I don't think that there's like a most untouchable number. I think though, if you had to look at like, I think that quarterbacks is like the most untouchable number, basically. Like whatever a really good quarterback wore, I think are the most untouchable numbers.
That makes sense. Because I mean, it kind of depends on the team and the sport as I started thinking about this, you know, like Babe Ruth wore number 3, you know, like that's obviously it's Babe Ruth.
Maybe 42 because of Jackie Robinson.
42, Jackie Robinson, 23 in basketball. If you're a Chicago Bull, you know, like nobody needs to be messing with that. So I think it's pretty team dependent, you know, like as Andrew says, and as you said, Jackie Robinson in baseball, if they're going to retire one number across the sport, obviously that probably does become the most untouchable number that there is, number 42, when you think about it. Okay. So do you think that it's time to stop retiring numbers?
Let me cook here. I do think it is time to stop retiring numbers. And I'm not just saying this because it's my Dallas Cowboys, but I love what they do with the number 88. They don't retire it. They make it a legacy. They make it an honor to wear the number. Right. I think more teams should adopt that type system. If you feel strongly about a player and you believe that they are continuing a legacy, then you make a legacy number. It's the same thing. Instead of retiring it, you just make it a legacy number, and you only allow a select group of players to continue and wear that number. So I'm sorry that the Cowboys do it, but that's how I think it should go. And I love that they do that with 88.
Absolutely. And, like, I think that is a much better way to do it. You honor the tradition, like if you are, like if you're Abdul Carter and you were picked where you were picked and 56 was still available, you give him 56 right away because you're honoring the legacy of Lawrence Taylor in that case. I think it's, there are only so many numbers. The Celtics have retired the most numbers of any sport of any professional sport. 22 numbers they have retired, which seems unbelievable. The Bears have retired 14, but there are only so many numbers to go around. Like, could you imagine if Notre Dame started retiring numbers? Like, what would you do? What would you do? Like, because there have been so many greats who have come through Notre Dame. Like, you would limit even more, who can wear what number. Just put them in the Ring of Honor, like do the ceremony for them, raise the banner for them, whatever sport that it happens to be, and honor that number, but don't actually retire the number. Just make sure that it is there, the number and the name, for everybody to see, just like when you go inside Purcell Pavilion and you see all those names and numbers, that are hanging up there in the rafters, and do it that way. And like you said, I think that's actually one of the best things that the Cowboys do is, like Jalen Smith got to wear Chuck Howley's number 54 when he came into the NFL. Chuck Howley, still the only losing player in a Super Bowl to be named Super Bowl MVP, like one of the original greats, and, like Bob Lilly as well coming through, so like, I think that you make a mistake by retiring these numbers, because then you get yourself into these situations.
Yes.
Honor the players instead. I think it's a much better way to go. So Tommy said, but literally every single player wears 42 one day through the season. But they won't let anybody else wear it for the rest of the season. But that's part of honoring the legacy of Jackie Robinson by having everybody wear it.
He's just being a smarty pants.
Yeah, I know. Pat said he posted last week on IB that his dad was in the hospital. Very scary. He's back at home and now doing okay. And he wants to thank everybody for your prayers. Glad to hear that, Pat. And hopefully is on the rapid road to recovery. Glad to hear that, and appreciate the update on that. So there's a baseball play from the other night that's generating a bit of discussion. Atlanta's Matt Olson drove a ball down the left field line, and Cincinnati outfielder Tyler Callahan injured his arm crashing into the wall trying to make the catch. Olson raced around the bases and scored while Callahan lay injured after the ball rolled away from him. Fair or foul for Olson to score after Callahan was injured on the play?
This was fair, and even I will stand on this as much as possible. There's multiple factors into this. One, I thought he caught it, first of all. Second of all, if it's on the umpire to stop play and basically call it a ground rule double. 3, I think it's fair because he injured his non-throwing forearm. Just pick up the ball and throw the ball in, like if the umpires don't stop it and they don't call a catch, what's Matt Olson supposed to do? Is he just supposed to just stop because the guy is injured? It's just, unfortunately, injuries happen. And again, he injured his non-throwing forearm. Just pick up the ball and get it in, and then lay there and suffer in your pain or whatever. But this reminded me back to, again, another high school days where we had a kid rounding third and he blew out his leg or did something, and he could have crawled to home plate, but he just laid there. It's like, to me, I get it, you're hurt, but man, just show some of that competitive spirit. Like you're gonna come out,
It's funny you brought that up. It's funny you brought that up because first of all, this is not like select to baseball. Like it's not just baseball. In every sport, this happens. They don't stop a play once the ball is snapped. In football, if a guy gets hurt, the play still goes on. In basketball, guy falls down in backcourt in the middle of a fast break. They wait until the resolution at the other end, and then they stop to come check on the injured guy. And it's the same as baseball. Once the ball is in play, you don't stop for injury. The play has to continue. Like, That play you're talking about, I was thinking about that. When people started complaining about this as well, we had a pinch runner at first base in a sectional game. He was in the game. He was literally on the team. We moved him up to varsity because he's a little jackrabbit, specifically because of his speed. So we get a ball in the gap, 2 outs. He's coming around third, and he turns his ankle, and he falls down over, coming around third base. I think it would have tied the score at that point.
It
like
would have.
late
Ball
in
was
the
smoked.
game.
He could have crawled to home plate.
Yes, he could have crawled to home plate or just crawled the 8 feet back to third base and lay on the bag, and he would have been safe there at third base. But he did neither. And so in the meantime, I'm standing over him, and if, as the third base coach, if I touch him in any way, he is out right away. So I can do nothing. And I'm like, can you crawl to the base? Are you okay? Can you crawl to the base? And he just laid there. And it was it felt like forever while he was laying there. But, finally they threw the ball in, they tagged him out laying there. And then at that point, we could help him off the field. But it was very frustrating that happened. You were there as well. That's right. DK says we're ruthless. That poor kid. Guess what? The next day he was walking around fine. It was more his pride was hurt than his actual ankle.
I've just always been, granted it's different for everyone, but my natural instinct is to finish the play and not just kind of lay there. So
right.
Let's save this last one for tomorrow because I think it can get pretty lengthy.
All right. I think so as well. Jesse's got to get going. Now that we've ripped on every kid, playing Little League through high school. So, all right. Thanks for the questions tonight. As always, in the Mailbag show, We In, We Out is coming up tomorrow. So you'll have a chance to submit more questions there. Michael says, get the bubble wrap. All right. Hit the like button before you leave. We do appreciate it. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.